2 weeks ago, the president of the Philippines stood in front of his entire country and bet its future on artificial intelligence. 4,000 acres, up to $70 billion, up to 190,000 jobs. The United States chose this one piece of land as the site of the first AI-native industrial hub on the planet. And before I filmed this, I went looking for US coverage. I couldn't find a single major AI channel talking about it. It's called Pax Silica.
Pax Silica.
Pax Silica.
Pax Silica.
Half the country it's landing in is celebrating. The other half is furious. And honestly, both halves have a point. Let me show you what's actually happening. July 27th, Manila. President Marcos gives his State of the Nation address, the biggest speech on the Philippine political calendar. And the centerpiece is an AI city. His words,
an ecosystem that will have AI at its core.
To understand how we got here, you have to rewind 7 months. December 12th, 2025, Washington, D.C. The U.S. launches something called Pax Silica, a coalition of countries agreeing to build the entire supply chain for the AI era together. The chips, the critical minerals, the data infrastructure, the advanced manufacturing. And one country is very deliberately outside that circle: China. Think about the name for a second. Pax, like Pax Romana, peace enforced by whoever holds the power. Silica, as in silicon, an American-led peace built on chips. 7 countries signed at launch. The Philippines joined in April as member number 13. By the June summit in Washington, membership had jumped to 24, signed on to its AI principles that same week. That's how fast this thing is moving. And here's my honest take. This is the biggest AI story of the summer, and it got zero coverage in the US because it happened 8,000 miles from San Francisco. We cover model releases like their moon landings. An actual city? Silence. Okay, so out of 24 countries, why did the first physical hub land in the Philippines? The site is New Clark City in Tarlac, about 2 hours north of Manila, sitting right next to what used to be America's biggest military base outside the U.S. mainland. 1,618 hectares. That's the 4,000 acres. It sits inside something called the Luzon Economic Corridor, which the U.S. and the Philippines have been quietly building out for 2 years. The coalition is calling it a golden node, first of its kind anywhere. And the concept is genuinely new. Instead of retrofitting AI onto old industrial parks, you build a hub that's AI native from day one. Chip facilities, minerals processing, research institutions, all designed around each other from the first blueprint. Foxconn, the company that builds your iPhone, is lined up as the anchor tenant. The Philippine Finance Secretary named them himself. The money comes heavily through U.S. development finance, and the DFC just had its war chest expanded to $205 billion. The framework agreement between the two governments is being finalized right now, targeted for signing in November. Now let's do the math out loud, because the scale here is wild. The investment starts at $10 billion and could reach $40 to $70 billion once fully built out. The entire Philippine economy is around $500 billion a year. So at the top end, this is one project worth roughly 14% of the country's GDP on one plot of land. There's no American equivalent to that. It would be like someone dropping a $4 trillion project on a single county in Ohio. All right, now the part of the story that made me want to cover this in the first place, a lot of Filipinos do not want this. The day of that speech, 15,000 people marched in protest. The president's own sister just filed a Senate resolution demanding a probe into the project. And before you write them off as anti-progress, listen to their numbers, because their numbers are real. An AI hub at this scale needs about 130 million liters of water per day. That's the daily water consumption of 600,000 households in one facility. It needs around 3 gigawatts of electricity, equal to 16% of Luzon's current grid capacity, the output of 3 coal plants for 1 campus. And here's the detail that made me stop scrolling. The reservoirs proposed to supply the site top out somewhere between 65 and 120 million liters a day. The projected demand is 130. The water math doesn't close, which means seasonal deficits in central Luzon, the region that grows the country's rice. Now, the government's answer is that the hub gets its own dedicated power, mostly solar, and won't touch groundwater or the public grid. Maybe, but nobody has published the load study that would prove it, and until they do, the farmers are arguing against a promise. So when a rice farmer in Tarlac says you're taking my water so machines can think, that's a real sentence with real arithmetic behind it. And the uncomfortable truth for people like me who make a living on this technology is that the skeptics are at least half right. Farmers and rural communities are looking at this and asking the obvious question: who carries the cost and who gets the upside? Because historically, in projects like this, those have been 2 different groups of people. And when they hear foreign investors might get 99-year leases on that land, you can understand why sovereignty keeps coming up. But here's what surprised me when I actually read the Filipino criticism instead of the headlines about it. Most of the serious critics aren't saying no, they're saying yes with conditions. Guarantee water for households and farms first before a single server rack gets a drop. Prioritize renewable energy so the grid math works. Write Filipino engineers and local cooperatives into the contracts so the jobs are theirs and the value stays. Make every contract and every resource allocation public, which turns this whole story into something much more interesting than a protest. A country of more than 110 million people is openly negotiating the price of going first. And this is where it connects to everything I talk about on this channel. Every argument happening in the Philippines right now. Is it worth the cost? Are we giving too much away? Will we regret it if we wait? Is the exact argument I hear from founders every single week. Same fear, same math, scaled up to an entire nation. Look at what the Philippines actually did. Vietnam has a bigger manufacturing base. Indonesia has more people and more minerals. Singapore has more money. And the first golden node on planet Earth is going to Tarlac because the Philippines raised its hand in April while everyone else was still forming committees. That's the whole first mover game in one sentence. The seat went to the country that moved, and everyone who moves after them will be negotiating from a weaker position. Can I be honest with you for a second? Part of me reads those water numbers and winces. I build my business on this technology, and I still think the farmers deserve a straight answer, not a press release. Going first is only worth celebrating if the safeguards are real. I believe in liberation through the machines. I've never believed in liberation for some people at other people's expense. But here's the other side of that coin, and it's the side that's invisible right now. The cost of going first shows up immediately. It's in the headlines. It's in the protests. You can photograph it. The cost of waiting shows up in year 5, when the jobs, the engineers, and the supply chains have settled somewhere else. And there's no protest photo for the factory that never came. Both costs are real. Only one of them gets covered. So here's what to watch. November, the ASEAN summit comes to Manila. Trump is expected in the room, and the framework agreement gets signed there or it doesn't. And the thing that matters is whether those conditions, the water guarantees, the energy sourcing, the local hiring, actually make it into the contract or get left in the op-eds. If they make it in, this becomes the template for how a mid-sized country joins the AI economy without selling itself. If they don't, the critics were right, and every country watching learns the opposite lesson. And if you're a founder watching this, you're running the same decision at your own scale this quarter. What the Philippines is doing with 4,000 acres, you're doing with your next 12 months. The bill for moving is visible. The bill for waiting isn't. You pay one of them either way. A whole nation just did the thing I've been telling individual founders to do for 2 years, and they did it with the bill sitting right there on the table. That takes nerve. Whether it takes wisdom, we find out in November. If you want the follow-up when that framework gets signed, what actually made it into the contract and what got cut, tell me in the comments. That video only exists if you ask for it.